The thing about working search and rescue above the Arctic Circle is that you get comfortable with silence, not the absence of sound. There's always wind, always the groan of ice settling, always your own breath fogging in the headlamp beam. I mean the silence of empty space, miles of it, the kind that makes you understand why the Inupiaq have 47 words for different types of darkness. I'm on my 4th year at the Utqiagvik SAR station. Tonight's a paperwork shift, which means I'm alone in the operations room with 3 thermoses of coffee and a stack of incident reports that need signatures. The heater clicks on every 12 minutes. The radios hiss their white noise lullaby. Outside, it's minus 37 degrees Fahrenheit, and the tundra stretches flat and featureless to the horizon like a frozen ocean. Most people who go missing out here fall into 3 categories: tourists who underestimate the cold, locals who underestimate their sobriety, and elders who simply walk into the white and don't come back. That last category we don't talk about much. It's cultural, it's complicated. It's not my story to tell. What I can tell you is this: the radios always click at 3:07. Not a transmission, not interference, just a single sharp click across all 5 channels simultaneously. Atmospheric pressure, I told myself for the first 2 years. Electromagnetic phenomenon, the aurora does strange things to signals up here. Then last night, I checked the station log going back 11 years. Every night, 3:07 exactly, every single night for over 4,000 consecutive days. That's not atmospheric, that's accounting. And last night, after the click, I heard something else. A sound like papers shuffling, like someone flipping through a ledger, running their finger down a column of names. Last night, I heard them stop on mine. The call came in at 2:47. I was still staring at the logbook, pen frozen in my hand, when the emergency line lit up. A voice I recognized, Thomas Akpik, a whaling captain from Browerville speaking fast in a mix of English and Inupiaq. His daughter, 8 years old, Nika, she'd taken the dog sled out to check the nets despite being told to wait until morning. The lead dog came back alone an hour ago, still in harness, trailing cut traces. I was geared up and on my snowmobile in 6 minutes. Before I cleared the gate, Auntie interrupted me. That's what everyone calls her, Auntie. She's not my aunt. She's not anyone's aunt specifically, but she's everyone's auntie in the way that matters. Worked SAR before she was a formal SAR, knows the eyes like she knows her own kitchen. She does dispatch now, mostly, and watches over the younger officers with the intensity of someone who's already buried too many of us. She stood in front of my snowmobile with one hand raised. You know the rules, Benjamin? I did. Everyone who works out here learns them in the first week, usually delivered as graveyard shift folklore by veterans with frostbite scars and 1,000-yard stares. Rule 1. Don't go out between 3 and 3:14 a.m. unless it's life or death. Rule 2. If you see figures in the distance that don't move like animals or people, don't acknowledge them, don't look directly at them, don't call out. They're called walkers, and they're always there. You just can't usually see them. I nodded. It's 2:49. I'll have her back before 3. Auntie's expression didn't change. She reached into her parka and pulled out a small pouch. Seal leather, stitched with sinew, the kind elders keep their most important things in. You know the first 2 rules, she said. Here's the one they don't tell you until you need it. She pressed the pouch into my gloved hand. Inside was something hard and angular. It felt like a piece of carved bone. If you see yourself ahead of you on the trail, she said, voice dropping to something barely audible over my idling engine. Do not catch up. Do not call to it. Do not try to overtake it. That one's already paid. The cold suddenly felt colder. Paid to who? She stepped back from the snowmobile. The tundra keeps books, Benjamin. The walkers keep the ledger. Find the girl. Bring her home. But remember, debts don't disappear. They only transfer. I didn't fully understand. I didn't have time to ask. I opened the throttle and drove into the dark. I found Nika at 3:09. By then, I'd already violated Rule 1. The search grid had taken longer than expected. Visibility was maybe 15 feet in the ground blizzard, and I'd had to dismount 3 times to check tracks. When I finally spotted the shape in my headlamp, small and dark against the snow, I felt a surge of relief so intense it was almost painful. She was curled inside a frost heave, a perfect square of uplifted ice, about 4 feet on each side, edges geometrically sharp in a way that natural ice never forms. She wasn't shivering, wasn't crying, just sitting there with her knees drawn up, head down, like she was waiting for a bus. "Nika!" I called, killing the engine and running toward her. "Nika, honey, it's Ben from SAR. Your dad sent me. Are you hurt?" She didn't respond. I knelt beside her, pulling off my glove to check her face for frostbite. Her skin was cold, but not frozen. Pupils reactive, breathing steady. She looked up at me with an expression I've never quite been able to describe. Not fear, not relief, something closer to resignation. "They said you'd come," she whispered. "Who said?" That's when I made the mistake. I turned my headlamp to check behind her, to see if there was anyone else, maybe an older sibling or a lost hiker who'd been sheltering with her. The beam swept across the figure standing directly behind her. Tall, maybe 8 feet, impossibly thin, black against the sky but somehow darker, like it was absorbing the light rather than reflecting it. No face, no features, just a silhouette that held itself in perfect stillness. Except for its right arm. Its right arm was slightly outstretched, angled down, exactly mirroring my own posture as I held the flashlight. I froze. The walker remained motionless for 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then it tilted its head, not like an animal cocks its ear to listen, like someone examining an interesting specimen. The gesture was perfectly calibrated, measured, almost curious. It was the exact head tilt I do when I'm assessing an injured hiker's mobility. It was my gesture. I heard my own voice in my head, screaming the rules. Don't acknowledge them. Don't look directly at them. Too late. I was staring right into the void where its face should be. The walker held my gaze for another impossible moment. Then, it simply wasn't there. No fade, no movement. Between one heartbeat and the next, the space behind Nika was empty. I grabbed the girl, pulled her onto my back, and ran for the snowmobile. I don't remember the ride back. I remember Nika's small arms around my neck. I remember my speedometer pinned at 47 miles per hour across terrain I normally take at 15. I remember the station lights appearing in the distance like a miracle. I remember checking my watch as we crossed the gate. 3:13. Nika was fine. Mild exposure, no frostbite, no injuries. Dehydrated, but alert. The clinic kept her for observation, and she was released to her parents that morning with a clean bill of health. I was a hero. Thomas Ackpick shook my hand so hard I thought he'd dislocate my shoulder. The station chief wrote me up for a commendation. Someone brought donuts. Auntie pulled me into the supply room and closed the door. You looked at it. It wasn't a question. I nodded. She closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they were wet. You saved the girl, she said quietly. That's good. That's what you should have done. But you need to understand what happens now. She sat down heavily on a crate of emergency flares. The walkers, they're not ghosts. They're not demons. They're auditors. The tundra takes people, Benjamin. That's just what it does. Has for hundreds of years. But there are rules, balance. When someone goes missing, their name goes in the ledger. The walkers come to collect. Collect what? The debt. The space they took up. The warmth they borrowed from the world. My grandmother tried to explain it once. The words don't translate right. She rubbed her face. Point is, Nika's name was in that ledger. You found her alive. You brought her back. So the debt is closed. That's good. No. Her voice was flat. The debt doesn't disappear. You looked directly at a walker. You acknowledged it. By doing that, you accepted the transfer. Someone still has to pay. The ledger needs a name. My stomach dropped. Now it's yours. She stood up, pulled me to my feet, looked me hard in the eyes. You have 7 shifts. When the clock hits 3:07, 7 nights from now, the walkers come for you. Unless you balance the ledger another way. What way? A missing person call will come in. You find them, alive. Then you transfer the debt. The case closes clean. Your slate is wiped, and you walk away a free man. A cold void opened in my stomach. That can't be true. It is. Your name leaves the book. Another one takes its place. The horror of it locked my jaw. When I could finally speak, the words were a whisper. You're telling me I have to condemn an innocent? Her expression didn't change. I'm telling you the rules. What you do with them is between you and the ice. She left me in the supply room with my thoughts and the distant hum of the refrigeration unit. 7 shifts, 6 days. By the end of the week, I either save a life or sacrifice one. The worst part? I'm already thinking about the math. The next night, I drew solo patrol. Routine sweep of the lake road, checking the ice fishing shelters, making sure no one's passed out drunk in their truck. Quiet shift, empty tundra. The aurora was out, painting the sky in sheets of green and violet. At 3:07, the radio clicked. Then the ice beneath my snowmobile vanished. Not broke though. Vanished. A perfect square, 8 feet on each side, opened directly under me. I killed the engine and threw myself sideways, rolling onto solid ice as the machine teetered on the edge. The hole wasn't filled with water. It was filled with nothing. An elevator shaft of absolute black dropping into a depth I couldn't measure. The aurora light hit the edge and just stopped. Then something climbed out. The walker rose from the shaft like smoke taking shape, but this time it wasn't a featureless silhouette. It was wearing my SAR coat, the same model, same color, same wear pattern on the left elbow where I lean on the truck door. My name patch was stitched on the breast, Harper B, but the letters were backwards, mirror flipped. It stood on the ice and shifted its weight to one hip, a tired stance I fall into at the end of long shifts. Then it opened its mouth. The first sound was static, like a radio stuck between channels, a dry crackling exhalation that might have been an attempt at breath. It stopped, tilted its head, my head tilt, that same analytical gesture, and tried again. The second sound was closer, a rasp that almost had syllables, almost had tone. It was trying to learn my voice. I pulled my flare gun with shaking hands and fired directly into its chest. The flare entered the dark code and kept going. No impact, no light, no sound, like throwing a stone into a bottomless well. The bright red phosphorus just disappeared into that infinite black. The walker looked down at the entry point, then back at me. It tilted its head again. This time, I recognized the gesture from the inside. That's what I look like when I'm sizing someone up, when I'm deciding if a hiker can make it another mile, or if a victim's story adds up, or if someone's dangerous. It was learning how I think. Then it stepped backward into the shaft. The square of missing ice sealed over in an instant, smooth and perfect, like it had never been broken. I sat there for 5 minutes before I could move. I owed them a debt. Night 3. The headache started on night 2. Now it is something else. A thick, solid pressure behind my eyes, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. It feels less like a headache and more like my skull is trying to unmake itself from the inside. I was at my desk staring at an incident report until the letters bled together when Nika's father shouldered his way into the station. His daughter Nika was a silent shadow behind him, her small face far too serious. "Harper?" Heaving the cooler onto the break room table with a wet thud. 40 pounds of silver salmon for saving my girl." I stood, the motion sending a fresh hot spike to my temples. That is too much. I was just doing my job." My objection died as Nika's voice, small but impossibly clear, cut through the station's low hum. "Auntie showed me where to wait," she said. "She said someone would come before the bad thing did." Then the studio went silent. One moment, there was the familiar clutter of noise. Chief Morrison's low chuckle, the clack of Dale's keyboard, the static hiss of the radio. The next, there was nothing. It was as if a glass bell had dropped over the entire room. Morrison was frozen, his coffee cup an inch from his lips. Dale's hand hovered over his mouse, his fingers poised but unmoving. The radio's static did not just go quiet. The absence of it was a physical weight in the air. My gaze dropped to Nika. Her dark eyes were fixed on me, and they held a knowledge that had no business in the face of an 8-year-old. They were ancient and terrified. A full 3 seconds passed. The pressure in my head tightened. Then the world rushed back in, too loud and too fast. Morrison let out a sharp, forced laugh. "Nika, honey, you know Auntie. She's everyone's friend. She was probably just praying for you as all." He took a sip of his coffee. "Right," Dale chimed in, his voice a notch too high. He clicked his mouse with unnecessary force. "Kid, Auntie's got a sixth sense about these things, like a guardian angel." He laid a heavy hand on his daughter's head, his smile tight. "Do not go giving the officer your wild stories, Inuk." But Nika did not look away from me. She did not even blink. "Have you seen her since that night?" she asked. The silence returned, but this time it felt deliberate, a solid wall. "Hey," I said, my voice sounding too loud. No one turned. I forced a chuckle. "Morrison, Dale?" I waved a hand in front of the chief's face. His eyes didn't flicker. He took another sip of coffee, staring right through me. My chuckle died in my throat. The truth, cold and absolute, settled in my gut. Nika was the only one who could see me. The throbbing in my skull intensified, a sudden vicious twist. "I see her all the time," I managed, my voice rough. "She helps with dispatch once in a while, Nika." "No." Her voice was flat, certain, a verdict. "Have you really looked at her? I mean, truly looked? Once you do, you will know what I mean." He was already pulling her toward the door, his apologies trailing behind him. "Kids and their imaginations, you know how it is. Thanks again for everything, Harper." The door clicked shut. The station snapped back to life. The clatter of keyboards, the murmur of conversation, the rustle of paperwork. It was all there. But it was wrong. It was like watching a film where the audio is out of sync, a hollow performance, and I was the only one who had missed their cue. I stood, rooted to the spot, staring at the dark plastic cooler beaded with cold water, and a cold, solid thought formed in my mind, cutting through the pain. What does Auntie look like? I see her every day. I take my coffee when she tells me to. I nod at her updates over the radio. But I cannot, for the life of me, summon a single specific detail of her face. Not the curve of her smile, not the shape of her hands, not the way she moves through a room. It is all just a pleasant blur. I spent my lunch break in the basement archives. Down here, the world is reduced to the grit of dust on my fingertips and the dry whisper of turning pages. When my phone lights up with my wife's call, I watch the screen go dark. Everything else can wait. Everything else is noise. The station's records go back to 1962, when the formal SAR program was established. Before that, it's just scattered reports in the municipal building's library annex. I start with recent files, pull Auntie's employment records from 2020. There she is, Photo ID clipped to a W2. Same auntie, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a beaded chain. Warm smile. Date of birth, March 15th, 1960. Another form, employee health insurance enrollment. Same photo, maybe a few less wrinkles. Date of birth, March 15th, 1960. Pension paperwork. Date of birth, March 15th, 1960. Original hiring documentation. The photo is slightly faded, but it's her. Same face, same smile. Date of birth, March 15th, 1960. I flip back and forth between the photos. The lighting is different. The backgrounds change. But her face stays exactly the same age in every single image across 30 years. The headache is an ice pick now, driving into my frontal lobe with every heartbeat. I drive to the library and request historical records, search and rescue reports, anything from the region. The librarian, an elder named Margaret, peers at me over her glasses. That's quite a project. What are you hoping to find? I just need to understand the history, I say, my voice tight. My phone buzzes in my pocket. Again, I know it's her. I know I'm stressing her out, but the thought is a distant thing, drowned out by the static in my head. I have days, maybe less. This takes precedence. Everything takes precedence. She brings me photo albums, community newsletters, newspaper clippings. 1956. A group photo volunteers after a successful rescue, in the back row partially obscured. Auntie. Same gray hair, same glasses. 1968. A dedication ceremony for the news station. In the crowd. Auntie. 1987. A wartime civil defense meeting. The photo is grainy, black and white, but I can make out her silhouette in the second row. Margaret leans in to look, her pleasant librarian's smile still in place. It doesn't waver as her eyes track Auntie's face across the decades. She doesn't startle or question. She simply nods as if confirming a known fact. That's Auntie and all of them, isn't it? She murmurs. Funny how some folks just have that timeless quality. My mouth is dry. How old is she? Oh, you know elders. Margaret pats my shoulder, her touch making me flinch. It's rude to ask. Why do you want to know? She adds. Because it doesn't make sense. The words scream inside my skull. Because I want to hold these photos side by side and force you to see that the same woman is in a photo from 1952 and a report from last year. Because everyone is blind when they look at her. Instead, I say, just curious. Margaret's smile doesn't reach her eyes. Curiosity is good, Ben, but some things out here, they don't want to be understood. They just want to be. She walks away before I can ask what that means. I make it home at 6 p.m. with the headache drilling so deep I'm seeing halos around every light source. Sarah's waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed. Jaw set in the way that means we're about to have the same fight we've been having for 3 months. You missed dinner again. I was working. You're always working. She's crying now, angry tears. When you're here, you're not here, Ben. You're somewhere else. With her. With who? Denise? The secretary? Don't play stupid. Everyone at the station talks. Sarah? I'm not. Then where were you today? Dale saw you in the archives for 2 hours. Said you looked like you were researching something intense. What were you researching, Ben? I don't have a good answer. Can't explain. I was looking up photos of a 70-something dispatch operator who apparently hasn't aged since World War II. Can't explain that an 8-year-old girl warned me about a woman who's hypnotized the goddamn town. Can't explain any of it without sounding insane. So I say nothing. Sarah's face crumples. Get out. Sarah? Get out. Go stay with whoever you've been running to. I don't care anymore. She's shoving my jacket at me, pushing me toward the door. I grab my keys off the hook and stumble into the cold without a plan. I sit in my truck in the driveway, engine running, heat blasting. The station has a bunk room, but Dale is probably there. I have no friends in this town. Not really, just co-workers and acquaintances. I could drive to Fairbanks, get a hotel, clear my head. Instead, I put the truck in reverse. And that is when I see it. A warm golden light spills from the kitchen window. The silhouette of my wife moves past the sink. Then, the sound hits me. It is not the quiet I left, but the vibrant noise of a family meal. The clatter of plates, my son's high-pitched story, my daughter's giggling interruption, and underneath it all, a man's easy, resonant laugh. My laugh. I kill the engine and step out into the freezing air, and drawn to the window like a ghost, I peer inside. There they are, Sarah, the kids, and me. They are gathered around the table. The man at the head of the table leans back in his chair, a wide, relaxed smile on his face. It is an expression I have not worn in years. He says something, and Sarah laughs, her real, unforced laugh, and reaches out to squeeze his arm. I am running before I know I have moved. Up the porch steps, through the door, which is unlocked. The sounds and smells of dinner, pot roast, my favorite, wash over me. I stand frozen in the hallway entrance, watching this perfect imitation of my life. "Get out," I whisper. The words have no force. The man, the other me, turns his head. His eyes meet mine across the room, and he smiles, a slow, knowing smile. The room shifts. Suddenly, I am the one sitting at the head of the table, the taste of pot roast in my mouth. My daughter tugs on my sleeve, and Sarah smiles at me from across the table. I try to stand, to scream, but my body is a puppet. I feel my face form a warm, paternal smile. I hear my own voice, but it is not mine, say, "This is perfect." My eyes dart to the dark glass of the patio door. In the reflection, I see it, standing in the corner of the kitchen watching. The walker. It wears my sour coat, its face a smudged photograph. It tilts its head, and my reflection in the glass mimics the gesture. Sarah's smile becomes fixed, her gaze intensifying. "We are so glad you are finally here, Ben," she says, her voice syrupy and wrong. "Stay with us." I throw myself backward, the chair clattering to the floor. I scramble on hands and knees toward the front door as their voices rise in a harmonious, desperate chorus. "Ben, do not go. Ben, we love you. Ben, your dinner is getting cold." I stumble into the truck, slam the locks, and force myself to look back. They are all at the kitchen window now, Sarah and the kids. They stand in a row, staring out at me with identical, placid, vacant smiles. The drive to Auntie's cabin is a blur, my body operating on an autopilot my mind can no longer sustain. By the time I park, the clock reads 9 p.m. The headache is no longer just pain, it has begun to feel like static. A soft glow came from inside her cabin. I staggered to the door, my legs unsteady. It swung inward before my fist could connect. And there, standing in the threshold, I finally saw her. The flush in her cheeks is wrong, too red, like old meat. Her body is too thin beneath her house dress, and bones pressing against skin that's lost its elasticity. When she smiles, her lips pull back too far, showing too many teeth. "Benjamin." Her voice is the same warm rasp. "Are you alright?" I try to run, try to get back to the truck, but she's there, hand on my shoulder, impossibly fast. "Shh, child. Come inside. You're seeing things, aren't you? The walkers do that. They get in your head, make you doubt what's real." She guides me toward the door with surprising strength. "But I can help. Come have tea. We'll talk." I don't want to go inside, but the headache is so bad I can barely stand. And her cabin is warm, and she's the only person who's acknowledged that any of this is happening. I followed her inside, the door closing behind me with a soft final click. The cabin felt smaller than I remembered, and darker, as if the walls had crept inward to swallow the light. I noticed the shadows in the corners didn't behave properly, stretching and pulling in defiance of the single oil lamp that burned on the counter. Without a word, Auntie guided me to her kitchen table, her hands on my arm as she directed me into a chair. She moved to the stove to put a kettle on, her motions possessing a fluid, unnerving grace that belonged to someone decades younger. "You're on night 3, she says, not a question. The middle point. That's when it gets worse. Your mind is trying to bridge 2 states of being, warm and cold, living and..." She trails off, pours tea into mismatched mugs. I wrap my hands around the mug. The ceramic is cold despite the steaming liquid inside. "Why is this happening to me?" My voice sounds distant. "Because you looked." She sits across from me. "And because you saved the girl. Nika." "Yes." Something flickers across Auntie's face. Almost regret. Almost. "She wasn't supposed to come back, Benjamin. Some accounts are meant to close." "What does that mean?" She sips her tea. "Would you like to hear a story? An old one? About the ocean and sacrifice, and the price of living too long?" I nod because I don't know what else to do. Because the cabin feels like it's pressing down on me. Because I can feel something in the corners, waiting. Auntie's voice drops to a storyteller's cadence. "There was once a woman who refused to marry. Her father tried everything, arranged matches with strong hunters, wealthy traders, even shamans. But she refused them all. She had no interest in men. The tea tastes like seawater. One winter, she fell in love with her dog, a beautiful animal, strong and loyal. They say she loved it more than anything human. When her father discovered this, he was filled with shame. He took her out in his kayak, far from shore, and threw her into the ice water to drown. I want to put down the mug, but my hands won't move. She tried to climb back into the kayak, grabbed the gunwale, begged her father to pull her up. But he took his ulu and cut off her fingers. One by one, each finger that fell into the water became something new. Seals, whales, all the creatures of the deep. And the woman herself sank down to become Setna, the mother of the sea, the keeper of drowned things. Auntie's voice has changed, became layered, like multiple people speaking in unison. But here's the part they don't tell children. Setna didn't just become a goddess. She became hungry. Every finger she lost was a piece of warmth taken from the living world. And to keep existing, to keep her place in the deep, she needs to replace that warmth. Again and again. Forever. My vision is tunneling. The cabin walls seem to breathe. We all make choices, Benjamin. Some of us choose to drown. Some of us choose to cut the fingers. Some of us. She leans forward, and her face is changing, cheeks hollowing further, skin pulling tight against skull. Some of us choose to feed. In the window behind her, I see them. Walkers. 3 of them, standing perfectly still, watching. I try to stand, but my legs are numb. Try to speak, but my tongue is thick. Auntie reaches across the table, touches my hand with her cold hands. I'm sorry, Benjamin, but you understand, don't you? A child's life buys more than an adult's. More years, more warmth. But you saved her. You broke the equation. So now, I need yours. She is holding a curved knife with a bone handle. I try to move, but my body is leaden, and a cold understanding dawns. I know what she has put in my drink. It won't hurt. The cold comes fast at this stage. You'll just stop. And I'll have 17 more winters. Maybe less. I'm not as young as I used to be. She laughs, and it sounds like wind through empty buildings. Though I suppose 7 centuries is a good run. The walkers in the window are in sight now, standing behind my chair. I can feel them, radiating cold. Auntie raises the knife, and in that suspended moment, a fractured memory crashes over me. It comes in a flash. A woman is screaming, running desperately through deep snow with a mop at her heels, their torches cutting through the darkness as voices shout, "Witch, demon, unclean." She stumbles and falls, and someone catches her, holding her down while another brings the ulu to her face. The blade cuts from cheek to jaw, and she is screaming a name over and over in a desperate, pleading mantra. Akna, Akna, Akna. I shout the name without thinking, a raw cry that tears from my throat. Akna! The effect is instantaneous. Auntie recoils as if I've struck her, and the knife clatters to the floor. Light pours through the window. Not moonlight, not aurora. Something older. It illuminates Auntie in harsh relief, and I see what she truly is. The centuries of borrowed time written in the spaces between her cells. The hollow where her humanity used to be. The scar on her cheek that never healed. The walkers behind me scatter, simply cease to exist, like smoke in wind. Auntie, Akna, crouches away from the light, making sounds that aren't quite words. It's giving me a chance. I run. I burst out the door and into the suffocating snow, my truck keys already clutched in my hand as if they had materialized there. The engine roared to life on the first try, a miracle or some other form of interference. I didn't know, and I didn't care. It wasn't until I was half a mile down the road, the tires crunching on the packed snow, that I dared to glance in the rearview mirror. Her cabin sat dark and silent, a solitary stain against the vast wide expanse. But in the single window, I could see her, a stark silhouette standing perfectly still, watching me flee. She was waiting. Night 4. The station feels wrong in a way I can't articulate. The fluorescent lights hum at a frequency that makes my teeth ache. The coffee tastes like copper. But I walked in for my shift. Morrison looked up from his desk, smiled and went back to his paperwork without saying a word. Not unusual, except Morrison always asks about the weather. Always. For 3 years, every single shift. How's it looking out there, Harper? Today, nothing. Dale's at his desk, typing with mechanical precision. His posture is too straight, his movements too measured. I tried to talk to him when I came in, asked him if he wanted to grab lunch later. He looked at me with eyes that didn't quite focus and said, "I don't know you." Then he went back to typing. The headache is constant now, a thick, pulsing pressure behind my eyes that makes the edges of my vision blur. When I blink, I sometimes see after images of things that aren't there. A tall figure standing in the corner, a hand reaching for my shoulder, the shape of someone's face pressed against the window, watching. I've been staring at the same incident report for 20 minutes. The words keep sliding off the page. At 14:37, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but the area code was local. I almost didn't answer. My hand was shaking when I picked up. "Harper?" The voice was tight with fear. Thomas Ackpick. "I need to talk to you. Not at the station. Can you meet me?" "Thomas, what's wrong?" "Not on the phone." His breathing was ragged. "The old fish camp, north of town. The one by Otter Creek. You know it?" I did. Abandoned for years. Just a few rotting shacks on the ice. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. "Come alone," he said. Then quieter. "I'm being followed." The line went dead. I grabbed my coat and keys. Auntie was at the dispatch desk when I passed, her fingers moving across the keyboard with that same unnatural fluidity. She looked up as I walked by, her smile too wide, showing too many teeth. "Going somewhere, dear?" "Routine patrol." "In the middle of your shift?" Her head tilted, just slightly, the same angle the walker had used. "You should rest, Benjamin. You look so tired." "I'm fine." "Are you?" She stood up, moving around the desk toward me. I backed toward the door. You've been having such a hard time lately. The headaches, the confusion. Sarah told me you've been seeing things. My blood went cold. You talked to Sarah? Of course. We were all so worried about you. Her hand reached out, fingers cold even through my sleeve. Perhaps you should take some time off before something happens. I pulled away and pushed through the door into the brutal cold. Behind me, I heard her laugh. The drive to Otter Creek took 45 minutes. The landscape was flat and featureless, an endless expanse of white broken only by the occasional stunted tree. The sky pressed down like a lid. I kept checking my rearview mirror, but the road behind me was empty. The fish camp appeared like a wound in the snow. 3 shacks, their walls gray and skeletal, leaning into the wind. Thomas's truck was parked at an angle, driver's door still open. I killed my engine and stepped out into the screaming cold. Thomas? The wind swallowed my voice. I approached the nearest shack, my hand on my service weapon. The door hung from one hinge, creaking with each gust. Inside, the floor was thick with drifted snow. An overturned chair, a rusted kerosene heater. Thomas? I called again. Here. I spun. He was standing behind me, maybe 15 feet away. His face was haggard, eyes sunken and red-rimmed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Are you alright? He shook his head. It's been following me for 3 days. Tall, thin, like a shadow standing up. I see it in my rearview mirror, at the edge of my property. Sometimes I hear it walking on my roof at night. Thomas, what? I need you to tell me the truth. His voice cracked. Is this because of my daughter? Relief flooded through me, so intense I almost staggered. Yes, Nika, you remember her. His face went blank. Who? Nika, your daughter, 8 years old. I found her 4 nights ago, saved her life. I don't have a daughter. The words were flat, automatic. I have a son, Tobias. He's 6. No, you came to the station. You brought me fish. You said I've never been to the station. He took a step back. I don't know what you're talking about. Thomas, please. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos. I had to have something, some proof. But when I got to the night of the rescue, there was nothing. Just a gap in the timeline. Photos from 2:45, then nothing until 4:23. You called me, I said desperately. 20 minutes ago, you said you were being followed. I called you because it's getting worse. His voice dropped to a whisper. The shadow. It's getting closer. Last night, it stood at my bedroom window. I could see its outline against the glass. And Benjamin? He looked at me with naked terror. It was wearing your coat. The cold suddenly felt colder. What are you talking about? Your SAR coat. I could see the patch. Your name, Harper B. But the letters were backwards. He was shaking now. What did you do? What did you bring back with you? I saved the little girl, I said, my voice low and steady. Your daughter. I don't have a daughter. The scream tore from him as he fumbled for his car door handle, his eyes wide with pure terror. I've never had a daughter. Get away from me. He pushed my hand away. He got into the car and shut the door. The engine started. He drove off down the street. The taillights shrank in the dark, and then were gone. I took a step forward, a plea on my lips, but a hand fell on my shoulder, its grip firm and final. I turned. Dale was standing there, smiling, that same warm, vacant smile I'd seen on my family, on Morrison, on everyone. Hey, Ben. His voice was too loud, too cheerful. What are you doing all the way out here? Dale? My heart was hammering. How did you? When did you? I was checking the nets. Caught some nice char today. He gestured toward the third shack. Want to see? His shadow was wrong. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the snow. Mine stretched out beside me, a normal human silhouette, but Dale's was too tall, too thin, stretching back toward the shack in a shape that didn't match his body. Dale, I said slowly, I think you should step back. Why? That same bright smile. I'm just here to help. You don't fish, Dale. You're a vegetarian. You've told me 1,000 times. The smile didn't falter. Of course I fish. I've been fishing here for years. No, I said. You haven't. For a moment, nothing moved. The wind died. Even the creaking of the shack fell silent. Dale stood perfectly still, that smile frozen on his face like a photograph. Then his head tilted, slowly, mechanically, the exact angle the walker had used. You should go home, Benjamin, he said. The voice was still Dale's, but layered underneath was something else, something that sounded like wind through empty buildings. Your family misses you. That's not my family. Isn't it? The head tilted further, past any natural range of motion. Sarah's making dinner. The kids are doing homework. Everything is exactly as it should be. You're the one who's wrong. You're the one who doesn't fit. Behind them, the shadow elongated, stretched. The sunlight seemed to bend around it, creating a void in the shape of a person. I reached for my service weapon, but my hand was shaking too badly to draw it. Dale, if you're still in there. I'm fine, he said, his voice still bright. Better than fine. I don't have that headache anymore. I don't have those nightmares. I'm not afraid. The smile widened. You could be like this too, Benjamin. No more pain. No more fear. Just peace. That's not peace, I whispered. That's nothing. The thing wearing Dale's face took a step closer. In the direct sunlight, I could finally see what Thomas had seen. The skin wasn't quite right. Too smooth, too uniform, like someone had painted over a surface that was never meant to hold paint. And underneath, where the shadow met the snow, there was no texture, no depth, just a flat, absolute black. I grabbed the flashlight from my belt and shone it directly at Dale's face. For a fraction of a second, the light passed through him. I could see the shack behind, the grey wood visible through his chest like he was made of smoke. Then he solidified again, but the smile was gone. His face had gone slack, features settling into something smooth and featureless. The mouth was too wide, the eyes were too far apart. You looked, it said in a voice that was no longer Dale's. Rule 2. You're not supposed to look. It's 2 in the afternoon, I said, backing toward my truck. The rules only apply after 3 a.m. The thing that wasn't Dale laughed. It was a sound like ice cracking on a frozen lake. The rules changed, Benjamin. When you took the debt, you changed them. Now we can come anytime, anywhere, as long as the ledger needs balancing. Behind it, more figures were emerging from the shacks. Tall, impossibly thin, their shapes cutting sharp silhouettes against the wide expanse. But these weren't shadows. These were people. The men from the third shack, a woman in a parka, an elder with a walking stick, all of them smiling with that same vacant expression, all of them moving with that same fluid, unnatural grace. Dale? I tried one more time. Dale, I know you're in there. You showed me the photo. You remember Nika. You remember the rules. For a moment, something flickered behind those 2 white eyes. A spasm of recognition. Fear. I looked. Dale whispered, his voice suddenly his own again. Oh God. I looked right at it. It was wearing my mother's necklace, the one I buried her with. I saw it, and I looked. And now... His eyes snapped back to that placid blankness. The flicker was gone.
Dale zones out sometimes,
the thing said in that layered, wrong voice.
He'll be fine. He'll be better. He'll be balanced.
Dale turned away from me, his movements suddenly jerky and mechanical. He walked back towards the shacks with rigid, upright posture, not looking back. I ran for my truck. The walkers didn't follow. They just stood there, a line of figures against the white, watching as I fumbled with my keys, as I gunned the engine, as I fishtailed away from the camp. In my rearview mirror, I saw Dale get into his truck. He sat perfectly still, hands at 10 and 2, staring straight ahead. Then he drove away in the opposite direction. I made it back to town by 16:30. The sun was already setting, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple. I didn't go to the station. I went to the library instead. Margaret was at the front desk, stamping books with metronomic precision. When she saw me, her face lit up with that same too-white smile. "Benjamin, how lovely to see you. I need to see the old Saw records again, from 1956. "Of course, dear." She stood up with impossible fluidity. "Right this way." She led me to the basement. The stairs creaked under our feet. The lights flickered. "You know," she said conversationally, "I've been thinking about our last conversation. About Auntie." "What about her?" "You asked how old she was." Margaret stopped at the bottom of the stairs, turning to face me. In the dim light, I could see that her shadow was too long, stretching back up the stairs in a shape that didn't match her body. "That was very rude, Benjamin. You shouldn't ask elders their age." "Margaret, when did you start working here?" "Oh, I've been here for years." "How many years?" Her smile didn't waver. "Does it matter?" I rushed past her into the archives. The boxes were where I'd left them 4 days ago. But when I opened them, the photos were different. The group photo from 1956, the one with Auntie in the back row. She was gone, just a gap where she should have been, the people on either side standing slightly too far apart. The dedication ceremony from 1968, no Auntie. The wartime civil defense meeting, no Auntie. I went through every box, every file, every photograph. She'd been erased, removed from the record like she'd never existed. Except for one photo. At the bottom of the last box, tucked into an unmarked envelope, was a single black and white photograph. It was old, the paper yellowed and brittle. The date on the back read, February 3rd. She looked exactly the same. Same gray hair, same smile. The caption on the back was in Russian, but someone had translated it in faded pencil. "The witch, Akna, receives her mark. May God have mercy on her soul." I heard footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the photo in my pocket and turned. Margaret was standing in the doorway, backlit by the stairwell lights. Her silhouette was too tall, too thin. "Find what you were looking for?" she asked. I didn't answer. I pushed past her and ran up the stairs. Behind me, I heard her laugh, just like Akna. "A few more shifts left, Benjamin," she called after me. "The ledger is almost balanced." I burst out into the cold evening air and ran for my truck. The streets were empty. The windows of the houses glowed with warm light. Families gathered for dinner. Everything normal and perfect, and wrong. My radio crackled to life. "Unit 7, this is dispatch." Auntie's voice, calm, professional. "We have a welfare check at 342 Maple Street, requesting your response." 342 Maple Street. My house. "Negative," I said into the radio. "I'm off duty." "Benjamin?" Her voice dropped, becoming intimate, threatening. "Your family is waiting for you. Sarah made pot roast. Your favorite. Don't you want to go home?" I looked up at my rearview mirror. She was sitting in my back seat. Not a reflection, not a shadow. Auntie herself, flesh and blood and impossibly there. Her hands folded in her lap, that patient smile on her face. "You can't run from this," she said softly. "The death doesn't disappear just because you're afraid. It follows you. It waits. And when the ledger finally balances, you'll be grateful for the peace." I threw open my door and fell out into the snow. When I looked back, the truck was empty, but I could still hear her voice, carried on the wind. "Few shifts left, Benjamin. Then you'll understand. Then you'll stop fighting. Then you'll be accounted." The descent started on night 5, but I didn't recognize it as descent. I thought I was investigating. I thought I was solving the problem. What I was actually doing was dissolving. Dale came in for a shift at 1800, and when he saw me at my desk, he smiled with teeth that were just slightly too white. "Rough day, buddy?" he said, and the words were right. The tone was right, but the cadence was mine. The exact rhythm I use when I'm checking on someone who's had a bad call. "I'm fine," I said. "You always say that." He laughed. My laugh. The one I do when I'm deflecting. Even when you're not. Even when you're sitting there thinking about how everything's falling apart, and you can't tell anyone because they'll think you're crazy. I stared at him. I never said that out loud. "Didn't you?" He tilted his head. The angle was perfect. The angle I use when I'm assessing someone's mental state. "Maybe you did, and you just don't remember. You've been having those blank spots, haven't you?" The headache pulsed behind my eyes, a sharp spike of pressure. "What blank spots?" Dale pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, turned it toward me. Security footage, black and white. Timestamp 3:07, 2 nights ago. I was standing in the hallway outside the operations room. My eyes were closed, my lips were moving, forming words I couldn't hear through the silent footage. My hands were at my sides, fingers twitching in sequence. Counting. "You stood there for 4 minutes," Dale said softly. "Then you walked back to your desk and kept working like nothing happened. Morrison asked if you were okay. You said you'd just been checking the thermostat." "I don't remember that." "I know." He put the phone away. His smile was gentle, concerned, perfectly calibrated to my own expressions of empathy. "It's okay, Ben. We all have blank spots now. It's easier once you stop fighting it." Morrison appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand, that same too white smile. "Everything okay in here?" "Ben's having a hard time," Dale said. "We're all worried about him." Morrison's voice was warm, fatherly, using the exact inflection I'd heard him use with rookie officers who were struggling. "Maybe he should take some time off, before something happens." I stood up so fast my chair hit the wall. "I'm going on patrol." "At night?" Morrison's eyebrows raised. "That's not safe, Ben. You know the rules." "It's 2000 hours. I have 7 hours before the rules matter." I grabbed my coat and walked out. Neither of them tried to stop me. They just watched me leave with those patient, knowing smiles. Outside, the cold hit like a fist. -42. The kind of cold that makes your lungs ache, that turns your breath to ice crystals before it leaves your mouth. I got in my truck and started driving with no destination in mind. Just the need to move, to be away from those smiles. That's when I noticed the night clerk through the station window. Mary, 60-something, always humming hymns while she filed paperwork. She was standing perfectly still at her desk, head tilted at that familiar angle, staring directly at me with pupils so dilated her eyes looked black. I drove. The headache had evolved beyond pain into something else. Pressure, density, like my skull was filling with frost, ice crystals forming in the spaces between thoughts. Sometimes when I blinked, I saw after images, a tall figure standing in my peripheral vision, a hand reaching for my shoulder, the shape of someone's face pressed against the passenger window, breath fogging the glass from the inside. I pulled over on an empty stretch of road and checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Sarah, 2 voicemails I couldn't bring myself to listen to. A text from Thomas. Need to talk. I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I opened my photos and scrolled back to the night of the rescue. The gap was still there. Photos from 2:45 showing my gear laid out on the station floor. Then nothing until 4:23, showing me filing paperwork with what looked like mud on my boots. Not mud. Frozen blood. I drove to Thomas's house, sat in the driveway for 10 minutes, engine running, heat blasting, trying to steady my breathing. His truck was there, lights on in the kitchen. Through the window, I could see him sitting at the table, head in his hands. I knocked. He opened the door and looked at me with eyes that had forgotten how to sleep. Show me a picture of your daughter, I said. He just stared. Nika, your daughter, the one I saved. Show me a picture. Thomas reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone with shaking hands, scrolled through his photos. He turned the screen toward me. A boy, maybe 6 years old, dark hair, bright smile, holding up a fish almost as big as he was. Tobias, Thomas said quietly. My son, my only son. No, the word came out broken. No, you have a daughter, Nika, 8 years old. She took the dog sled out to check the nets. I found her in a frost heave at 3:09. I brought her back. I know you did. His voice cracked. I know you brought someone back. But Ben, I've never had a daughter. I've checked my birth certificates, my tax records, my wife's medical files. We only had Tobias. He's 6. But I remember thanking you for saving Nika. I remember bringing you salmon. I remember her face. He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in hard. I remember things that never happened. And the more I try to hold on to those memories, the more they slip away and get replaced by things that feel wrong, but everyone else says is right. What do you mean? Tobias' birthday. My wife and I celebrated it 2 weeks ago. He turned 6, but when I look at the photos, he's in clothes that are too small. And in the background, there's a shadow. Tall, thin, wearing something that looks like your SAR code. I can see your name patch, but the letters are backwards. The frost behind my eyes expanded. What did I bring back? I whispered. I don't know. Thomas's eyes were wet. But it's wearing your face now. 3 nights ago, Tobias woke up screaming. Said there was a man in his room who looked like Officer Harper, but his smile was wrong. I checked, found nothing, but when I turned on the lights, there were boot prints in the frost on his window. From the inside Ben, like something had been standing in his room, breathing on the glass. I backed away from his door, my mind fracturing. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be sorry. His voice followed me to my truck. Just fix it. Whatever you did, whatever deal you made, fix it before it takes everyone. I drove back to the station, parked, couldn't make myself go inside. The building looked wrong. The windows were glowing, but the light was too steady, too perfect. No flicker, no shadow, just flat, even illumination that made my eyes hurt. Dale was visible through the operations room window. He was typing on his computer. That same mechanical precision, his posture too straight, his movements too measured. Every 30 seconds, he stopped, tilted his head, then resumed typing, like a metronome, like clockwork. I couldn't go in there. Not yet. I drove to the library instead. Margaret was at her desk, even though it was nearly midnight. She looked up when I entered, and her smile was immediate, white, wrong. Benjamin, working late? I need to see the archives again, the old records, everything you have from before 1960. Of course. She stood with that fluid grace that belonged to someone decades younger. Right this way. She led me downstairs. The air grew colder with each step, my breath fogging in the dim light. The basement smelled like old paper and something else, something organic and rotting. "Here we are." Margaret gestured to the shelves. "Take your time. I'll be right upstairs if you need anything." She left me alone with the boxes. I started pulling files, incident reports from the 1950s, search and rescue logs, community newsletters, every document I'd looked at before, trying to trace Akna's presence through the decades. But the photos were different now. The 1956 group photo. Auntie was back, standing in the second row this time, clearly visible. Same gray hair, same smile. The 1968 dedication ceremony. There she was, front and center, shaking hands with the mayor. The wartime civil defense meeting. She was at the podium, speaking with the assembled crowd. She hadn't been erased. She'd been rewritten, made more visible, more present, like reality was retroactively adjusting to accommodate her existence. I kept digging, going further back. 1947, a group of volunteers clearing snow from the old airstrip. Auntie was in the back, holding a shovel. 1932, a blurry spot of a town meeting. Auntie sitting in the third row. 1921, a formal portrait, the kind taken with old cameras that required long exposures. Everyone else slightly blurred from small movements, but Auntie was perfectly still, perfectly clear, standing at the edge of the frame with her hand on the shoulder of a small girl. The girl was maybe 8 years old. I turned the photo over. Written in faded ink, rescue volunteers with the Koczynski girl, found alive after 3 days. Miracle. The girl looked exactly like Nika. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the photograph. I kept going, pulling boxes I hadn't noticed before, files that seemed to appear as I searched. And in every decade, every generation, there was a photo. A young girl, lost and found. And in every photo, somewhere in the frame, was Auntie. 1909, a child found in a snowdrift. 1887, a girl who wandered away during a storm. 1856, a daughter thought drowned beneath the ice. All of them the same age. All of them with the same dark eyes, the same serious expression. All of them alive because someone had found them. Someone had gone into the dark and brought them back. And in each case, within a month of the rescue, someone else had vanished. An adult, a volunteer, a hero. The ledger always balanced. I was about to close the last box when I found it. Not a photo. A book. A leather cover walrus ivory toggle, the kind of binding that predated modern bookmaking. I opened it with trembling fingers, and the pages crackled with H. The handwriting was Cyrillic mixed with Inupiaq syllabics, scripts flowing together like water mixing with oil. But I could read the first entry. Maybe because I needed to. Maybe because it wanted me to. Akna, daughter of the storm, 1721. Keeper of the balance. Let no debt go unpaid. Let no name leave the ledger except in exchange for another. Her name was written in rust brown ink, blood ink. Every page that followed was filled with names, hundreds of them, thousands, each one carefully inscribed, each one crossed out with a single decisive line, and next to each crossed name, another name written in fresh ink. I flipped through decades, centuries. The handwriting never changed, the same careful script, the same steady hand. At the very back, on the most recent page, I found my own name. Harper, Benjamin, SAR officer, debt assumed, 307, 6th night. Balance due, 7th night. Below my name, a blank line waited. I sat there in the cold basement holding the book, understanding finally what this was. Not just a record. A contract. A bill of sale. The physical manifestation of the deal Akna had made 3 centuries ago. The book was still open to my page when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Margaret descended slowly, each step deliberate. When she reached the bottom, she looked at the book in my hands, and her smile never wavered. "You found it," she said. Her voice had layers now. multiple tones braided together. That's good. It's better when they understand. How long have you been one of them? 37 years. She said it simply, like she was telling me her anniversary. I was a school teacher. There was a little boy, lost in a whiteout. I found him, brought him home. Everyone called me a hero. Her head tilted. 3 days later, I looked at a walker. Really looked. And then I understood. It's not so bad, Benjamin. You stop feeling cold. You stop feeling afraid. You just continue. That's not life. No, she agreed. But it's not death either. It's service. It's purpose. The ledger needs keepers. The balance needs maintaining. Akna can't do it alone anymore. She's so tired, Benjamin. 300 years is so long. She needs help. I stood, clutching the book. Where is she? Where she always is. Where she's been waiting for you since you took the dead. Margaret gestured toward the stairs. The station. At 3:07. She'll be at the dispatch desk with the fountain pen. All you have to do is sign the line below your name. Write someone else's name there. Anyone. A tourist who underestimated the cold. A drunk who won't be missed. An elder who's ready to walk into the white. Just a name, Benjamin. Then you're free. And if I don't? Then at 3:07, the walkers come for you. And you become like us. Like Dale. Like Morrison. Like me. Balanced. She smiled that patient, empty smile. Forever. I pushed past her and ran up the stairs. Behind me, I heard her call out, voice echoing in that basement space. You can't run from death, Benjamin. It follows you. It always collects. I burst out into the street with the book under my arm. My truck was where I'd left it. Engine still running. Heat still blasting. I got in and checked the time. 2:23. 44 minutes. I drove back to the station with the book on the passenger seat, its presence a cold weight that seemed to press against my ribs. The streets were empty. No cars, no people. Just a flat expanse of snow and the buildings standing like monuments to ordinary life. The station lights were on. Through the windows, I could see them. Dale at his desk, Morrison in the break room, the night clerk at her station. All of them moving with that same fluid, measured grace. All of them waiting. I parked and sat there, engine idling, watching them. In the rearview mirror, I saw movement. A figure approaching from behind, tall and thin, silhouette cutting sharp against the aurora-lit sky. It walked with purpose, with recognition, boots leaving no prints in the snow. I looked down at the book, opened it to my page, stared at the blank line below my name. All I had to do was write. Choose someone. Anyone. Transfer the debt. My pen was in my pocket. I pulled it out, uncapped it. The figure was closer now. I could see it in the side mirror. It was wearing my SAR coat, my name patch visible, letters backwards, mirror flipped. Its face was a smudge, a photograph left in water too long. But I could see the outline of my features trying to form in that blank space. It was learning how to be me. I looked back at the blank line. Then I closed the book. I got out of the truck and walked toward the station with the book under my arm. The cold hit hard, but I barely felt it. The headache had crystallized into something beyond pain, a solid pressure that made my vision sharp and strange. The doors opened automatically. The heat inside felt wrong. Too dry, too still. Dale looked up from his desk. Morrison appeared in the break room doorway. The night clerk stood from her chair. They all turned toward me in perfect synchronization, heads tilting at that familiar angle. Benjamin! Morrison's voice was warm, welcoming. We're so glad to have you back. Are you ready? I walked past him without responding, heading for the operations room. Auntie was waiting at the dispatch desk, just as Margaret had said she would be. The ledger lay open before her, my page visible, the blank line waiting. In her hand was a fountain pen, its barrel made from something that looked like carved bone, yellowed with age. She looked up as I entered, and for a moment, I saw her as she truly was. Not the kindly elder everyone believed in, not the warm presence who'd worked dispatch for generations. I saw the hollowness, the centuries of borrowed time, the scar on her cheek that had never healed, the frost in her eyes that had replaced whatever humanity she'd once possessed. "Benjamin," her voice was soft, almost gentle. "You brought the book. Good boy. It's almost time. Are you ready to choose?" I set the book on the desk between us, opened it to my page. "I want to understand something first," I said. "How did it start? How did you become this?" She was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the aurora flickered, casting green light through the windows. "They called me witch," she said finally. 1721. I was a healer. I knew plants, knew which roots stopped fever, which moss slowed bleeding. That was enough to make them afraid. When the sickness came that winter and I couldn't stop it, they decided I was the cause. She touched her cheek, tracing the old scar. They cut me, marked me, dragged me onto the ice, and left me to freeze. But you didn't freeze. No. Her eyes were distant, seeing 300 years into the past. I was angry, so angry. I wanted to live. I wanted them to suffer. So I cut my own fingers, all 10 of them, and I fed them to the dark. And the dark answered. It said, "You want to live? Then keep the books. The tundra takes people. It always has. Someone has to maintain the balance. Someone has to make sure the debts are paid. Do this, and you'll never die." So you became a monster. I became a keeper. Her voice hardened. For 300 years, I've maintained the balance. Every life saved means a life owed. The ledger must be full. The dark demands it. And yes, I've made the choices. I've written the names. I've watched them go into the white. She leaned forward. But I've also saved thousands, Benjamin. Thousands of children who lived because I made sure someone else paid their debts. That has to count for something. It doesn't. My voice was steady. You became what you hurt. You've done to others exactly what those villagers did to you. For 300 years. Her face twisted. You don't understand. You can't understand. The dark doesn't forgive debts. It doesn't forget. If I stop, if the ledger goes unfilled, it takes everything, everyone. The balance collapses. Then let it collapse. She laughed, sharp and bitter. You'd sacrifice this entire town? Everyone you've ever met? For what? Principle? No. I picked up the book, held it between us. I'd sacrifice the system, the one you've been feeding for 3 centuries, the one that only exists because you keep agreeing to it. I opened the book to the first page, to her name, written in blood ink, never crossed out. The ledger says the debt can be paid by the hand that wrote it. I said, you wrote your name first. You made the deal. You've been paying with other people's lives for 300 years. But the original debt was yours, Akna. It's always been yours. She went very still. Outside, the aurora intensified, sheets of green and violet swirling overhead. The station lights flickered. The radio hissed static. What are you saying? Her voice had gone flat. I'm saying we end it. Both of us. Your name goes back into the ledger as the debt. My name stays as the keeper. We close the book together. No more transfers. No more children saved and adults sacrificed. Just the 2 names that started this. Yours and mine. You'd die. I'm already dying. I can feel it. The frost in my head. The blank spots. The thing wearing my face. At 3:07, I either become a monster like you, or I get taken by the walkers. those are the only options left. I placed my hand on the book, palm flat against her name. Unless we change the rules. The dark won't allow it. Then let's find out. I reached across the desk and took the fountain pen from her hand. She didn't resist. For the first time in 300 years, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. I uncapped the pen, placed the tip against the page, right over her name. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Finishing your story," I said, "the way it should have ended in 1721. With a choice, with agency, with an ending that's yours, not theirs." I began to write, not a new name below mine, but a line through hers, crossing out Akna, daughter of the storm, 1721. She sucked in a sharp breath. The lights flickered violently, the radios shrieked, and she grabbed my hand, her fingers cold and brittle, pressing my palm down against the page alongside hers. "If you're going to finish my story," she said, voice cracking, "then do it right. Tell them I was human once. Tell them I was afraid. Tell them I wanted to be found, not forgiven." Outside, the walkers appeared, dozens of them, hundreds, filling the space around the station. Tall, impossibly thin dark silhouettes against the aurora light. They pressed against the windows, faces forming in that smudged blankness. All the people who'd looked, all the deaths that had never truly cleared. I kept writing, the ink flowing across the page. Not a crossing out anymore, a transformation. I wrote her story in the margins around her name. Every year, every choice, every moment of fear and rage and loneliness. "I see you," I whispered. "I remember you. You were Akna. You were human. You were hurt. And you survived the only way you knew how." A sound like breaking glass filled the station. The book began to glow, pale light seeping between the pages. The names written there, all those centuries of transfers and debts and balances, began to lift off the paper, ink swirling into the air like smoke, like snow, like all the stories that had never been allowed to end. The radios clicked. 307. The walkers moved as one. Not toward me, toward her. They flowed through the walls like smoke, like memory, converging on the dispatch desk. Shadow hands reaching out, dozens of them, hundreds, all the people she'd named over 3 centuries, all the debts that had been transferred and never truly paid. She didn't scream, didn't fight. She just looked at me with eyes that had finally remembered how to be afraid, how to be relieved. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for remembering me as human." Then the walkers took her. Not violently, gently, like they were helping an elder to her feet, guiding her toward a door that had been waiting 300 years to open. The light from the book intensified, becoming painful, white and absolute. I felt the frost in my head crack, shatter, the pressure released all at once, leaving behind a clarity so sharp it hurt. The station went completely dark. I don't know how long I sat there in that darkness. Could have been seconds, could have been hours. Time felt negotiable, plastic, like it was resetting itself to account for something that had been bent wrong for too long. When the lights came back on, the book was blank. Every page, every name, 300 years of entries, gone. Just empty vellum, yellowed with age, waiting to be filled with something new, something that didn't require sacrifice. The fountain pen lay on the desk, snapped cleanly in half. I picked up the pieces and put them in my pocket. Then, I heard snoring. Dale was asleep at his desk, head pillowed on his arms, breathing deep and even. Real sleep, human sleep. I walked over and shook his shoulder gently. He startled awake, looked around in confusion. "Ben, what time is it?" Why am I here? You pulled an all-nighter, I said. Come on, let's get some coffee. In the break room, Morrison was slumped in a chair, coffee cup still in his hand, completely out. The night clerk was gone, her coat missing from the rack. Probably went home some hours ago and nobody noticed. Everything felt normal, mundane, real in a way it hadn't been for 7 days. I checked the security footage, scrubbed back to 3:07. The timestamp showed my usual patrol routine. No standing in hallways, no whispering, no blank spots. Just me filling out paperwork, looking tired but human. The blank spots were gone, the false memories were gone, the thing wearing my face was gone. I drove home as the sun rose, painting the tundra in shades of pink and gold. The roads were empty. The town was waking up slowly, smoke rising from chimneys, people starting their ordinary days. My house looked the same as always. Sarah's car in the driveway, kitchen light on. I sat in the truck for a long moment, afraid of what I'd find inside. Then, I walked in. Sarah was making breakfast. The kids were at the table, arguing over the last waffle. They all looked up when I entered, and Sarah's expression was wary, hurt, but real, genuinely hers. You came back, she said quietly. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. I'm so sorry. I can't explain where I've been, what I've been doing. But it's over now. Is it? She looked at me carefully. Are you back? Really back? I crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug. She was warm and solid in herself. I'm back, I said. I promise. My daughter tugged on my sleeve. Daddy, you smell like smoke. I'll take a shower, I said. Then we'll have breakfast, all of us, together. It took weeks for things to fully normalize. Thomas brought me salmon again, thanking me for finding his daughter Nika when she'd gotten lost checking the nets. She was 9 now, he said, getting too brave for her own good. The details matched my memories. The timeline made sense. I never asked him if he remembered having a son named Tobias. Some questions are better left alone. The station ran its usual operations, search and rescue, welfare checks, the occasional tourist who underestimated the cold. But the success rate improved. Fewer people went missing. Fewer deaths needed balancing. Auntie's cabin sat empty. According to the borough records, it had been abandoned since 1978, which now matched what the archives showed. Her name appeared in some historical records, but only where it made sense. A volunteer, a community member, someone who'd helped when help was needed, then moved on. The ledger stayed blank. I kept it locked in my desk drawer at the station, checking it occasionally to make sure no new names appeared. It remained empty, clean, waiting. The radios still clicked at 3:07. Every single night, that sharp metallic snap across all 5 channels. I checked the logs. It went back as far as our records existed. Not 11 years, not 100, just a feature of the equipment, probably. Atmospheric pressure, electromagnetic phenomenon, the aurora doing strange things to signals. That's what I told myself. But sometimes, on clear nights when I'm on patrol, I see a figure in the distance, tall, thin, dark against the snow. It doesn't move toward me, doesn't threaten, just stands there at the edge of visibility, at the place where the tundra meets the sky. And once, just once, I thought I saw it raise one hand. Could have been a wave, could have been a farewell, could have been the wind playing tricks with shadows and light. I didn't look directly at it, didn't acknowledge it, didn't call out. I just kept driving. The ledger stays blank. The debt is paid. But the tundra still keeps its secrets. And I've become one of them. Every night at 3:07, when the radios click, I stop what I'm doing and listen. just to make sure the silence that follows is truly empty. So far, it has been. But I keep checking. I always keep checking. Because that's what keepers do. We watch. We listen. We remember. And we make sure the dark stays empty of names.